It costs not only time, effort, patience and money, but here obviously blockchain related settlements or cross-border payments improve all the issues of SWIFT extremely. I went to the conference of the Crypto Valley Association and Visa had a keynote speech there. And they also finally understood, like, 1 second, we don't have all this corresponding banking anymore.
Here in Brazil, it was very complicated, even for me, because I had a bank account, I had an international credit card. But then when it comes to buy online, it was very complicated because it was all blocked. So they say you can explain your business and then we can talk with regulator, we can talk with the institutions there. This is how this works in Switzerland.
We talked with some clients, they send cash in a container to pay the other side. The further the countries are away from each other, the better it is to use stablecoins.
Welcome to Block Central, a bilingual content platform focused on frontier finance and global business. Here, we engage in conversations with founders, investors, corporate leaders, and policymakers around the world, jointly decoding the underlying logic behind shifts in capital, technology, and institutional change.
Welcome to Block Central. Today is 4th of March 2026, and this is the third episode of Block Central. In our last episode, we discussed about stablecoins, and today we're looking at the plumbing of this monetary power. While many talks about crypto as an investment, and our guest today seeing it as something more fundamental. So joining me today is Tilmar, CEO of Sul Payments, and Christian, the founder of Sul Payments. Tilmar, Christian, welcome. How are you?
Hi Serena, good to see you. Thanks for having us here at the show.
Pleasure. Could you give a little bit introduction about yourself and what Sul Payment is doing?
My name is Christian Ribeiro. I'm the founder of Sul Payments. And at Sul Payments, we are developing global payment cross-border infrastructure. So what we develop here is a way to connect local rails from Latin America to international rails around the world. Our main goal here is to develop these settlement infrastructures using stablecoins.
Then let me take over. Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to this great podcast. My name is Tilmar. Chris is the founder of Sul Payments, and I'm the executive director here locally in Switzerland, making sure that the business runs according to local regulations, everything in and around stablecoin. As Chris mentioned, we offer a combination between local payment acceptance and cross-border settlement, multi-currency settlement, but of course nowadays it's mainly stablecoin getting sent across the border.
Amazing. Nice. So before we dive in, we can reframe a little bit about the friction in the old payment world through banking wheels. I can give an example. The international payments, now I feel they are so expensive. Like last month, I paid my insurance premium to Hong Kong, here from Switzerland to Hong Kong, and it cost me almost $40 US. It was bizarre because I'm so used to stablecoins so fast and also low cost. I haven't touched the traditional payment rail for a while, and that 40 cost of the SWIFT fee shocked me. How do you guys see nowadays the shift?
Yeah, maybe let me answer this question first. So $40 for your transaction, right? Depending on the amount is already quite good. Now the question to you, Serena, is how long did it take to send the money? How much paperwork was involved, right? That's another problem blockchain or stablecoin transfer solve is not only the costs going close to zero, it's also the availability. In Swift network, this traditionally has been only Monday to Fridays during banking hours, right? It takes a lot of time. It costs not only time, effort, patience and money, but here obviously blockchain related settlements or cross-border payments improve all the issues of SWIFT extremely.
Exactly. Actually, I want to echo that. Like, how long does it take, right? It usually takes T+1 or T+2 for the settlement. I used to work in a bank in Hong Kong, in a private bank, and back then the payment was the process was super manual. I can explain to clients that if you want to remit millions or tens of millions of Hong Kong dollar, we have to do this manually. And internally, it's been like, I have to fill in a form. I need to get a signature from my boss. Everything's so manual. And also you have a cut-off time. I just record this. The cut-off time was painful, and especially for cross-border payments. For example, I remember like US dollar, you have to do that before 1 p.m. Hong Kong time. So the operation window is super tight. And back to what you just mentioned, I would like to understand for Sul Payments, you guys also do this banking rails?
We do the banking rails, and what we do is connected this global liquidity with the local rails. I think this is the important thing here. When we talk about the old technology, we have the correspondent banks, we have the FX that's very expensive, and the liquidation is slow. So we are not moving money, we are moving message, like you said, right? So it's very manual. So you have the call, you have the message, and this is very slow. Now, with the stablecoins settlements, this is 24/7, and we are moving real money at the end of the day. It's like instant liquidation. This is the difference when you compare both systems.
Maybe similar to add to this, so at Sul Payments, we of course have both, right? We are a fintech company. We have traditional currencies all over Latin America, then of course in Europe and some of the Asian currencies. But of course, the further the countries are away from each other, the better it is to use stablecoin as a payment method. Not for retail yet, I think this is still all on fiat, but in between companies, merchant, cross-border, their USDT or USDC is, let's say, not the future. It's happening right now. Just yesterday, I went to the conference of the Crypto Valley Association, and Visa had a keynote speech there. They also finally understood, like, 1 second, we don't have all this corresponding banking anymore. It goes straight from not wallet to wallet, but merchant to merchant, and Sul Payments is there in the middle to help the merchants to move the money on, off ramp, different currencies, different stable coins as the region requires. Europe or USA is at the moment the both two USDT and USDC most used ones.
Echo to you mentioned they realized there will be no longer corresponding bank. I wonder how the bank reacted to this, but we can discuss this later. Before that, I would like to know, since Christian is calling from Brazil, I'm super interested in how the adoption rate of stablecoin now in Latin America.
I think it starts there, right? Because Argentina was more about get protected from inflation, and the stable coins was the perfect fit to democratize the access to the population to this protection. So before was very difficult to get protected against inflation, and stable coins have this. This is why because in Argentina we had this mass adoption. In Brazil, for example, we developed a PIX technology that is instant payment and cashless infrastructure, and it helps to democratize access to people to the financial system. And this is happening in the same path with the stable coins now. Because before, when we talk about move money, it was very complicated to small stores, small companies. The banks even don't, allow these companies to get into the system. Very complicated, not because of them, because of the system that was not prepared for this. Now we are seeing the evolution of this technology, democratizing the access and get a lot of people inside the system. I think this is what's happening now.
So this facilitates the transaction like between people, and the currency itself at one side is reserve of value because the local currency could depreciate really fast due to inflation. And on the other side, like you mentioned, many small business, they are unbanked. They even cannot open bank accounts. And now this stablecoin really helps to fix this. But how do you see from the government or the local bank's perspective? Because people there, they're not using local currency. They're using US dollar-based stable coins. So I'm really curious, what's the dynamic there locally?
Yes, for local transactions, I think the local currency still is the main thing used. The thing that happens in Argentina is people want to get protected about this fast devaluation of their savings, right? Now, when you look to Brazil, for example, Brazil, we are using more BRL PIX instant payments between companies. And of course, there is now this crypto protection, stablecoins or Bitcoin, more Bitcoin when we talk about reserve of values. And the government is, of course, worried about this situation. And now regulation is coming to make it more clear, even for ourselves. It's not easy to build this kind of business in Brazil. Regulation is not very clear sometimes. And we are working together. I think one of the advantages of Brazil is that we work together with the government in the development of some of these regulations that need to be made. When we see, for example, PIX is like against what the banks wanted, right? Because it was fast and cheap payment method between people and companies, free between people, right?
Oh, you mean the banks actually they don't like this? Pix is the instant payment system. It's driven by the central bank, right? They want to build this, implement this infrastructure. It's like Alipay in China, but Alipay is still a private company. But Pix is initiated by the central government. But you just mentioned that the other banks, the commercial banks, actually they don't like this.
So no, they need to have this push from the central bank, and this the fast adoption. Different from China, what happens here is like the central bank just put in the regulation. Now all the banks need to accept PIX. They need to put into their clients, and this helps fintechs to grow. Now with the fintechs, mass adoption happens because people that were out of the financial system, now they get in. So I think regulation, when it comes this way, it's very good because then help adoption, help the growth of the system. I think this makes a lot of sense. This is why I'm thinking about now stablecoin regulation that's just coming to Brazil and will help even more to get more adoption and, to get a clear vision about how this works. I think this helps.
So maybe to highlight how new this technology or how new the regulatory aspect is, on 5th of February, so basically exactly a month ago, the first VAS regulation came out by the Brazilian government. If you compare this to Switzerland, they already have this 10 years in place. So now for us, it gives us clarity on like what can we do, what can't we do. We need to look at this also a bit from the B2B perspective, something what Sul Payments does. Of course, retail payments, right? Let's say you buy something online in an online shop, or you want to on and off ramp BRL, Brazilian reais, to a platform. This is still done via PIX. However, imagine you're an international merchant with your international website, like a cryptocurrency exchange or cryptocurrency wallet, where you can on and off ramp. How do you receive your settlement, right? And we're not talking about like $100, $1,000, right? We're talking a tenth of million. And then suddenly the SWIFT system, capital controls, FX rates, all this costs, inefficiency skyrockets. It really becomes a problem because in the end of the day, you as the platform owner, entity, company, you need to receive your settlement to finance operation, pay operational expenses, right? But if every month, $10 million are stuck somewhere in the intermediary bank, and we're not talking about T+1, T+2, right? It usually goes somewhere first to the US, JP Morgan, right? Then another corresponding bank. Hey, sometimes you need to chase 2 weeks, right? Or longer. Maybe they're stuck somewhere and in the end, nobody's responsible. You need to chase all the time, right? This
that
becomes
happens.
a real bottleneck for companies. So here, if you look at real-time settlement, boom, click of a button and the funds are directly with you. And then you can do whatever you need to do with this to finance your business.
Definitely. This made me think, I don't know if Brazil has a capital control.
To control, what you mean with this? Like,
It means the Forex means you need a quota for the Forex exchange.
no, in Brazil, we don't have capital control. We only have different kind of remittance. So basically the regulation that we have in place control all kind of remittance. You need to describe exactly why we are sending this money out and what is this kind of remittance. This is why in the beginning, when this technology comes, was a little bit challenging for everyone that's working with this, right? Because you cannot see anymore what is happening, right? If I buy Bitcoin here and send to you there, there is no control anymore what's happening here. So now what we did, this is why we have Sul Payments, because we also have a payment institution in Brazil, a local regulated payment institution, and we start to get demand from our clients to get settled in stable coins because of all the advantage that we are seeing here, faster, cheaper. And then we had to create a solution to do this in a legal way. So we didn't want to buy crypto in Brazil and just send out bypassing all the regulations that we have in place, right? This is why we decide to build Sul Payments in Switzerland that has a clear regulation, like Tilmar said, more than 10 years already. And what we had to do is find a way to send the money from Brazil using the regulated remittance SWIFT channels. And then with the liquidity in Switzerland, we can do the settlements to the global clients. So this is how we build the business without bypass the local regulation. And this was very important for our growth. Different from other companies, we're acting in using the local regulation in our favor.
If I understand it right, to me it sounds like Switzerland is like a corresponding node for Sul Payments. Maybe we can get back to the VASP. Tilmar just mentioned that Switzerland already been existing for 10 years. Can you elaborate a bit on this regulation? Is that crypto relevant?
So VASP initially stands for Virtual Asset Service Provider, right? It touches any company which holds, sends, buys, sells any sort of digital assets. Since this is a new asset class or financial tool, so to say, you need to have new or adapted meaningful regulations. Questions like, do you hold the crypto? Do you invest the crypto? Do you lend it? What's the plan with this? And we see in other countries that the regulator has not asked themselves about this new technology because maybe they didn't see now the opportunity or challenges which comes along. Now, Switzerland being historically a financial hub, they, of course, are some sort of a lab of new financial technology. In the beginning, nobody really cared what is this, but now you see Switzerland implemented their rules so many years ago. Now Europe followed with the MiCA regulation. Now you see other countries also adopting it because the regulator understands that crypto is here to stay, or digital assets in general, whatever use case, are here to stay. So they need to regulate this to not miss the train for various advantages or disadvantages. Entities moving somewhere else, to have clarity, or entrepreneurs like Chris and me, we want to build something in an environment where we know what's going to happen. Not that we develop a product and then next week the regulator says, hey, you know, guys, this is not good, stop this. So it gives the certainty for the regulator that everything is according to the rules, and then people like Chris and me, we can have our creative ideas on second. Within this rule or framework, let's do this product or do that settlement. And I think this is very important for all of us in our industry, that every country now has their local regulations.
Right. You just mentioned about the certainty of the local regulation. In regard of payment, what are the major jurisdictions you see has this certainty in regulation, and have you already mapped in that?
So I think the use case itself of digital money, so to say, are all the emerging markets, right? Let's say, if you look at Euro and I want to send money from France to Belgium, I don't really see the use case in that. There we have the Euro SEPA, it's instant, immediately, right? Maybe it depends on the amount, but basically it's frictionless. Now, emerging markets where banking historically was inefficient or didn't really work, that can be probably all the Latin American continent. Then also, they don't really build a union in southern LATAM. All the countries are self-responsible and difficult to send money across the border because maybe the bank in Uruguay cannot correspond with the bank in Guatemala. Those issues you can easily overcome. I believe maybe Serena, you may be better an expert, but I see similar situation in Asia, Southeast Asia, right? All the different countries, they are not so interconnected as we may think. So here, any sort of stablecoin digital asset will definitely solve this inefficiency of local banking rails.
I think Hong Kong is one of the jurisdictions that is also good for crypto, right? When we start to look into countries where we can expand our business, we look into Hong Kong because I also have a very advanced regulation about this.
Yeah, Hong Kong is an interesting place. I think at early days, they define crypto as something like an alternative object. If you're trading crypto, they think of it as trading antiques, trading paintings. So at the beginning, they were pretty flexible. And then later on, there was some industry scandals. So they become very strict. There was a dynamic between Hong Kong and Singapore. And one regulatory authority was tight and another a bit more flexible. But for Hong Kong, by natural, as an international trading hub, I think maybe in the past 5 years, stablecoins was very popular among international trading. They use this as settlement. I'm not an expert in this. I just heard this from my friends that the custom of Hong Kong, they were looking into how to regulate the stablecoins. What they care about is the AML. Now for the stablecoin, Hong Kong rolling out a stablecoin regulation last August. Wow, it's a big topic. I think this is relevant to monetary policy. My another question is from what you see from your clients' activities. So who are the most active users for stablecoin payments? Who are the driving forces behind this?
So basically what we see, I think, are, two major use cases. We always talk about settlement. That's one thing. But we actually need to look at third-party payments or payments between companies. You can imagine avocado export, container ships full of fruits leaving Brazil, exported to the world, whether Europe or Asia. Nowadays, we talk with some clients, they send cash in a container to pay the other side. Imagine how this works. No? Here we see the great adoption. And what I said before is the further the countries are away from each other, the better it is to use stablecoin. Another thing is what we see is any digital content creator. Let's say you are a very famous dancer on TikTok. How do you receive the payouts you generate on the platform? Usually those platforms that may be based in the US, maybe they are based in Hong Kong. They don't have BRL payouts. There again, we have this inefficiency of cross-border payments. And then this is where we jump in and say, hey, 1 second, you can work with us. We take care about everything and we pay your supplier, pay your beneficiary in stablecoins, wherever they are in the world.
Yes, this is a big use case. And the companies, they don't want crypto payments. They want a better infrastructure, faster settlements, cheaper. So this is what the technology brings to them. Stable coins are the rails that we are using at the moment, but I think the infrastructure is the most important thing here. I see like hybrid structures for this technology connecting with global liquidity with the banks. So banks working together with this new technology. And this is a normal improvement because we didn't have these problems before. Like this TikTok example that Tilmar just put is a perfect fit.
Like the globalization of this internet economy.
Exactly. Yeah. And now onto this, sometimes people ask Chris and me, hey, why would people come to Sul Payments? And it's basic as this is banks don't like payments. They don't earn money with this. It's in and out. It's a lot of AML, KYC problems. So basically what we as Sul Payments, we are the payment department of a bank. We do everything. We are regulated. We are 3 years audited, no findings. We take care about the payment, something the banks don't want to do. Plus, we have multi-currency, stable coins, exotic currency, many things what local banks don't have.
So you just mentioned this. I mean, echo back to that you heard from yesterday's conference that they realize maybe they no longer need a corresponding bank. And you also mentioned that actually for banks, the payment is not a lucrative business. So how do you see this dynamics? How do you see like a bank's reaction to this stablecoin payments development? Or they will maybe really outsource the payment service to service providers like Sul Payment? How do you see this trend? Yeah.
So maybe, a little bit what digital assets, what YouTube did or Netflix did to the video industry, what Spotify did to CD player, right? This is what WhatsApp did to communication. It doesn't fully replace it, but it gives a very good, cheaper alternative. And in the end, the banks or we at Sul Payments, you need to have a specialized company like at Sul Payments who understands the crossroads between blockchain and the traditional finance, right? It's the AML part is new, right? It's new regulation, as you heard in Brazil. Banks are maybe not up to speed. They move like a dinosaur, too slow. You need to have young, dynamic companies, somebody who manages this for you. On, off-ramp, wallets, screening, all the requirements you have. It's not just like I click a button and I send money to somebody. There's a whole apparatus in the back. We have a financially regulated company. This is not some teenager sitting in the basement sending money back and forth. We are basically, a department of a bank managing all this. And banks, whether they pick up or there will be Sul Payments or other fintechs jumping into the space and taking over.
And you mentioned a very important part in this stablecoin payment cycle. Crucial part of it is on-off ramp, because what you receive is digital currency, is crypto, but you have to convert it into the fiat currency that you can use locally. So how do you integrate this with the banks? How it works?
I think this is the technology that we are developing here in Sul Payments. So what we do, for example, in Latin America, we have a regulated payment institution here. And this is the connection that we do with the local rails. In Mexico, we also have regulated company there that do the connection with the traditional financial system. So the fintechs are the space that connect local rails to the crypto economy. So we are using this new fintech regulation to connect with the traditional finance in a legal way. As I said in the beginning, like we had this idea to build Sul Payments there to find a way to do this business comply with the local regulation. And this is what makes us different from some business here in Latin America. We are more connected with this new regulation, looking into the license, what we need to operate, how we comply with remittance regulation. So we are doing everything in a way that with the fintech regulation, this helps a lot.
Curious. Why Switzerland? You also mentioned you looked into Hong Kong as well, and why eventually Switzerland?
I can be very transparent with you. So I am an entrepreneur since 2004. I built my first fintech here in Brazil in 2004. And then we are very successful. One of our first use case was related to games because I was a gamer. I think I can talk about a little bit about this. I was a gamer here and I was playing German game. It's not so popular, but it was an MMORPG. And then I realized that the premium version was much better. Then I decided to buy it. It was very complicated, even for me, because I had a bank account. I had an international credit card. But then when it comes to buy online, it was very complicated because it was all blocked. So the bank says this is an international credit card. But when we try to buy online, this I'm talking about, 2008, 2010. If you try to put your credit card there, they will never pass. So I had to call the manager, understand what's happening. Then they unlocked my credit card. I built my first company based on it. What I realized, I had a lot of friends playing this game here in Brazil. They wanted to buy it too, but they never find a way to buy it. I find it myself, and then I decide to sell to my friends, right? And then say, hey, there is a big business here. A lot of games that people play, they don't want to keep operations up and running in Brazil because they say, oh, Brazilian only play the free version. They never pay. There is no market there. This is what companies were saying. Then this first company that I created here fixed this situation. We start to provide local payment methods before Pix, like boleto, traditional transfers, bank deposits. People were buying things with bank deposits because they have no
Wow.
other way, right? So they have cash. So how pay for an online product with cash? So we provide them bank deposits alternative. Then this was the first fintech that I built here in Brazil. I sold to one of the biggest fintechs here. Is called PagSeguro. PagBank acquired my company. And this was one interesting because then one of the Asians from Switzerland, they were looking for entrepreneurs around the world. They come to Brazil. They visit my company and they said, hey, Christian, would you like to build your next company in Switzerland? I find this quite interesting. And then they came to explain me how regulation works, how this works. So this long history here is to explain why we choose Switzerland, but it was very interesting the way that the Swiss government come to us here. They find out who are the entrepreneurs around the world. They come to visit us and say, hey, if you have another idea, next company now, next movement, we are here, we are open. The regulation there is not locked. They say you can explain your business and then we can talk with regulator, we can talk with the institutions there to develop your business. This is what I find very interesting. I think Tilmar can give more details about this, right?
Yeah, so basically the Swiss Economic Affairs, Office of Economic Affairs, they look for promising fintech companies to bring them to the financial hub Switzerland. In this case, then they found Chris. Chris and me, we already know each other for some time. We came together. Maybe that's a good idea to pull it off here in Switzerland. And, this has been proven. Stable regulations, one of the most sophisticated financial hubs in the world, new financial products. They will most likely originate from a financial hub, right? Hong Kong, Singapore, Switzerland, basically.
Mm-hmm. Since we are here talking about Switzerland is very early advanced in crypto. For example, it gave the first crypto banking license in the world. Correct me if I'm wrong. It was back to 2018, right?
Yes, absolutely.
The MiCA came up later. So how is the regulation-wise for crypto and crypto payments in Switzerland now? How do you see this?
So I think, not now other jurisdictions, they pick up on the regulations, right? They all have the right to exist. That's all fine. But in the end, if you think about it, Switzerland always has been a financial hub, right? Then you have a neighboring country, Liechtenstein, also very advanced in all the digital asset regulation. Yes, of course, you have Hong Kong and other countries, but I think we should never forget that it always has been a financial hub. And then there are other good advantages you have, whether be it corporate services, you need accountants who are educated in digital assets. All the service provider you need to have run this new digital asset fintech company. So you need to have the people surrounding it, service provider, also to understand how this works. Let's look at MiCA. It's much younger, right? I don't say they are no experts, but they still need to build up all the experience Switzerland already has, right? We have maybe other tax advantage by holding or investing into crypto in Switzerland, very different than the European common market. So there are many good reasons why you should be, in a financial hub dealing with the new financial instruments.
One of the things that I find quite interesting when we come to there is that this SRO license that we have is not a license, it's an authorization, fintech.
Sorry, SRO stands for self-regulated organization.
Exactly. Yes. And this is very open. There is SRO licensed companies, self-regulated, that they do different things of what we are doing. So basically what it says, like I can explain, like I detail my business model and then they check it. Okay, makes sense. Now I know how you work. So sometimes regulation is tied to something that is not the reality because technology is evolving very fast, right? So
Right.
what I find quite interested in Switzerland is this SRO. I can describe my business model there. Then they analyze it, they check how I work, what I'm doing, and then it comes. So it's not tied to something that, is changing very fast. This is what I like. I think it's very interesting, this approach from Switzerland for this kind of business.
And that makes a lot of sense for business.
Yeah, because what we are doing now, maybe it will be very different in the near future. And always, if you tie the regulation to some kind of business model, it's difficult because there is some small change here. Then it's difficult to, like we did in Brazil, how we do remittance using stablecoins. We had to use the traditional local thing to do this. It would be much easier if we had a way to explain the business to the regulator and say, hey, this is what we are doing. And this is how this works in Switzerland. You just explain the business to the regulator, and then they say, yes, you can do this. All good. So they try to make it, some kind of approach between your business model and the local regulation. So I think it's very interesting.
Yeah. Switzerland is definitely very pro-business. And since we're approaching end of our podcast today, usually we ask the guest to leave one question to the next guest.
We see more and more stablecoins evolving around the globe. We still need to see which one will in the end be the main one, right? And maybe the question for the next guest would be, which chain do you believe is the most used in the next 5 years when it comes to stablecoin?
That's a very good question. So you also have to answer the last guest question. Just a quick quick answer. So he asked, what do you see the impact of AI for labor market?
Maybe labor market is difficult to say since we are fintech, but Chris and me, we have one opinion is basically if we imagine the financial system being on chain, this is all data, and if we can connect it with AI, then all the settlements, all this can be automated.
Liquidity management, payment routing, FX optimization, fraud detection, risk management. There is a lot of things. And I think this technology that we are building is perfect for AI. In my opinion, we'll see machines settlement to each other in real time 24/7, right? So they need the right technology to do this. And there is a connection between AI and blockchain payments for sure.
It can improve the efficiency largely, and it's a bliss for founders, I would say. Okay, thank you, Tilmar and Christian, for sharing your very profound insights and also experience from the market. And,
thanks, Serena, for having us.
Very nice chat.
That's it for today's podcast. If you like the content, please like and subscribe so you won't miss the future content, and we will see you in the next one.